These are three basic, pure types. But no one is a pure type, that is the difficulty. These are just categories. No one is a pure type, everyone is mixed. All the three types are in everyone. So really, it is not a question of which type you belong to. The real question is which type is predominant in you. Just to explain it to you, if it can be divided. But no one is a pure type, no one can be, because all the three are in you. If all three are in a balance, then you have a harmony. If all the three are unbalanced, then you go berserk, insane. That is the difficulty in deciding. So decide which is predominant, that is your type. How to decide which is predominant? How to know to what type I belong? Or what type is more significant to me, primary to me? All the three will be there, but one will be secondary. So there are two criteria to be remembered. 1, if you are a knowing type, then all your experiences basically will begin with knowing, never with anything else. For example, if a knowing type falls in love with someone, he cannot fall at first sight. He cannot. It is impossible. First he must know, be acquainted, and it will be a long process. Decisions can come only through a long knowing process. That's why this type of person will always miss many opportunities, because a moment's decision is needed. And this type cannot decide in the moment. And that's why this type is ordinarily never active. He cannot be, because by the time he can conclude, the moment has passed. While he is thinking, the moment is passing. By the time he comes to a conclusion, the conclusion is meaningless. When the moment was there to conclude, he could not do it. So he cannot be active, really. And this is one of the calamities in the world. Those who can think cannot be active, and those who can be active cannot think. This is one of the basic calamities, but it is so. And always remember, the knowing type consists of very few. The percentage is very small, 2 or 3% at the most. For them everything will begin by knowing. Only then will feeling follow, and only then action. This will be the sequence with this type: knowing, feeling, action. He may miss, but he cannot do otherwise. He will always think first. The second thing to remember is that this knowing type will begin with knowing, will never conclude before knowing, and will not take any standpoint unless both pro and con have been known. This type becomes a scientist. This type can become an absolutely impartial philosopher, scientist, and observer. So whatever your reaction or action is in situations, find out where it begins. The beginning point will decide the predominance. One who belongs to emotion will begin to feel first, and then will gather all the reasons. Reasoning will be secondary. He will begin to feel first. He sees you and he decides in his heart that you are good or you are bad. This decision is a feeling decision. He doesn't know about you, but at first sight he will decide. He will feel whether you are good or you are bad. And then he will go on accumulating reactions for whatever he had already decided beforehand. The feeling type decides first, then reasoning follows, then he rationalizes. So look to see in yourself whether you decide first, upon just seeing a person. Whether you become convinced that he is good, bad, loving, non-loving, and then you create reactions. Then you try to convince yourself about your own feeling: yes, I was right, he is good, and these are the reasons. I knew it all along, and now I have found out I was right. I have talked with others. Now I can say he is good. But the conclusion came first that he is good. So with a feeling type, the syllogism of logic is just operating in reverse. The conclusion comes first, then the process. With the reasoning type, the conclusion never comes first. First the process, then he concludes in the end. So go on finding out about yourself. What is your way of deciding things? With the active type, action is first. He decides in the moment to act. Then he begins to feel, then in the end he creates reasons. I told you that Gandhi is an active type. He decides first, that's why he will say, "This is not my decision, God decides in me." Action comes to him so immediately, with no process. How can he say, I have decided? A thinking type will always say, I have decided. A feeling type will always say, I feel like that. But an active type, a Muhammad, a Gandhi, they will always say, neither have I felt, nor have I thought. This decision has come to me. From where? From nowhere? If he doesn't believe in God, then he will say, from nowhere. This decision has bubbled up in me. I don't know from where. If he believes in God, then God becomes the decision maker. Then God initiates everything, and Gandhi goes on doing his part. Gandhi can say, I erred, but the decision was not mine. He can say, I may not have followed rightly. I may not have understood the message rightly. I may not have gone as far as I should, but the decision was God's. I had just to fall in behind it. I had to just surrender and follow. For Muhammad, for Gandhi, that is the way. I said Hitler is the wrong type, but he also talks in these terms. He also says, this is not Adolf Hitler who is speaking, this is the very spirit of history. This is the whole Aryan mind. This is a racial mind speaking through me. And really, many of those who heard Hitler felt that when he was speaking, he was not Adolf Hitler at all. It was as if he was just a vehicle of a greater force. The active man always looks like that, because he acts so immediately. You cannot say that he decides, he thinks, he feels. No, he acts. And the action is so spontaneous. How can you imagine where the action comes from? Either it comes from God or it comes from the devil, but it comes from somewhere else. And then Hitler and Gandhi will both go on reasoning about it. But they will decide first. So these are the three types. If action comes to you first and then feeling and then thinking, then you can determine your predominant characteristic. And to determine that predominant factor is very helpful, because then you can proceed straight. Otherwise your progress will always be zigzag. When you don't know what type you are, you go on unnecessarily into dimensions and directions that are not suited to you. When you know your type, you know, done with yourself, how to do it, from where to begin.